Welcome back to More for Less Media, where we create on a budget. Today I'm going to show you how to set up the Line 6 Pod Go inside the Reaper Digital Audio Workstation. We'll talk about the ins and outs and touch on reamping. Let's fire it up. The first thing I want to do inside Reaper is to open the Options menu and get into the settings under Preferences. Here I'm going to select Audio and then select Device. We need to make sure our ASIO settings use the Pod Go and that all the available inputs are configured. Other than that, you can just leave these at their defaults for now. Going back under Audio, there's another setting I want to show you. In Reaper, we can give aliases to our hardware inputs. Instead of just seeing input 1, etc., we can name them something that reminds us what they do. Just double-click and give it a name you want. I have mine entered already, so I'll exit out of here, and we can glance at the outputs. Remember that these are the outputs from your workstation, and they'll be feeding into the pod. This is an important distinction to keep in mind when we start talking about reamping. There's a great graphic in the pod owner's manual that helps to illustrate these ins and outs. Let me open that up now. If we go to the section for USB audio, we can get a picture of the way signals are sent back and forth when recording. On the right, we can see our unprocessed guitar signal is sent to the computer on channels 3 and 4. Processed audio is sent to the computer on 1 and 2. On the left, we can see where the pod would receive signals from the computer. Channels 1 and 2 go straight to the main outputs. Channels 3 and 4 get sent through the pod processing. Now that we're all set up, let's go back to Reaper and add a few tracks. We'll double-click in here to give the track a name, Guitar Dry Input. I'm going to disable the recording monitoring because I'll be listening directly to the pod in the room. I don't want to hear the audio coming out of Reaper right now. We'll add another track, this time to record the processed output from the pod. Again, I'll turn off the recording monitoring. We'll call it Guitar Amped. I'm going to create a third and final track for this demonstration. This will be used to send our dry guitar input that we recorded earlier back out through the pod a second time. The signal will get reamped, at which point we can change amps, pedals, EQ, or whatever we want. We'll talk more about that in just a second. This is a good time to mention that I'm using a custom theme for Reaper. This is strictly cosmetic and a personal preference. If I click on the old theme, you can see what Reaper looks like by default. Again, just a personal preference. I'll change it back and we'll do some recording. I like to take advantage of a feature in Reaper that lets me set a custom color for specific tracks to make them easier to identify. Let's pick a nice blue for guitar tracks. So as we're getting ready to record, we should be sure to set our inputs on each track. This first track will be our dry signal, and you can see that the input is aliased with the name we gave it earlier, which makes it really easy to know where the sound is coming from. Our second track will be a stereo track that records the processed output from the pod, which is sent to the computer on inputs 1 and 2. We'll ignore the third track for reamping for now, and we'll arm our first two tracks for recording. We can see from our meters that we're getting input. So far, so good. I'm gonna switch over to the preset editor and increase the volume on the patch for a little better signal. You can see this is just the first stock preset. I'll click on the output section and raise the level by about 5 decibels. Back in Reaper, I can see my signal levels are looking good, so I'll hit record and play something short and simple. There's audio in the room here, but I'm not capturing that on the video session. Okay, I'll disarm the recordings and solo the first track so that you can hear the dry guitar signal. Okay, cool, let's hear the processed version. Great. That all sounds about how I would expect. So now we have a track with our dry guitar signal and a track with all of our effects modeling. Let's mute our processed guitar track and get things set up to do some reamping. We're going to go up to our track with our dry guitar signal, and I'm going to add a path for sending the output back out to the pod. We're going to add a new hardware send and point it to outputs 3 and 4. You can see from earlier where we labeled those outputs as reamp. If you'll remember from earlier, if we go back to the diagram in our owner's manual, outputs 3 and 4 send the signal out from the computer to the pod in order to be reprocessed. The pod can add modeling and effects to either our guitar input or the signal from our computer on channels 3 and 4 that we just set up. Before we go any further, we have to the pod which source to use. In the preset editor, I'll click on the input section and change from guitar over to USB. While I'm here, let's turn on the tremolo effect. Reamping will let me hear how that sounds without having to re-record the guitar part again. Let's make sure our reamping track is set to receive the main signal from the pod. I'll arm the recording and hit play, and we should see some levels indicating that we're sending the dry guitar signal out to the pod, and then capturing it here on our third track. Okay, those inputs look good, so let's hit record and capture the reprocessed sound. Again, I can hear this in the room, but it's not captured on the video session. Let me play it back for you, and we can hear that tremolo effect has been added to our original recording. I'll disarm our reamp track and mute the track containing our dry guitar signal. Here's how it sounds. And there you have it. A new sound without having to record the part again. You can repeat this as many times as you like, or just loop the playback of track 1 and dial in the sounds with the preset editor until you're satisfied. Before I go, I'll show you one last feature of Reaper. I can select all these tracks and save them as a template for future recordings. Just click Save Tracks as Track Template and give it a name. I already have a template called Reamping, so I'll call this one Reamping 2. I'll delete these tracks and demonstrate. Instead of just adding a new track, I'll select Add Tracks from Template, and you can see our new template, Reamping 2, is available. When I click that, it will populate a set of tracks with all the inputs and outputs we just spent time creating. Before I forget, let's switch back to the editor and change our input back to our guitar signal. Follow along with these steps and you should be good when it comes to recording with Reaper and the Line 6 Pod Go. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment and I'll be sure to respond. This is More for Less Media. Please subscribe for more videos, and thanks for watching.